Woohoo!
Once again in our series, Breaking Down Consciousness, we've talked about 3 of the senses so far. Seeing, hearing, smelling. No, not smelling. Seeing, hearing, feeling.
Oh my gosh, you spoiled it.
I know. Seeing, hearing, feeling. And now we're going to move on to smell. And really, I kind of feel like, and this is going to be the first question, kind of weird thing about this, I almost feel like we should talk about smell and taste together.
Yeah.
Because they're super interrelated. Can you explain that? Like, how do they work together? And maybe, what's their purpose?
Smell and taste are obviously very connected senses. Where, like, if you're sick and your, like, nose gets all stuffy, your sense of smell is impacted in some way, all of a sudden the things you're tasting don't quite taste the same as they used to. A large part of taste is literally just smell, and your brain's kind of tricking you into being like, well, you're eating this, so you must be tasting this, but no, you're really just smelling it. When you're just smelling something, you can almost, like, depending on how strong the smell is, you can almost taste it on your tongue, whether that be, like, cookies baking or whatever, or even, like, a really, strong, unpleasant smell. You smell like seaweed, you can almost taste it on your tongue in a sensation.
So I think you would say that taste and smell do have their independent functions sometimes, but in general, they work together to facilitate what activity for human beings?
Food. The activity that they work together on is food. When you eat something, then you're tasting it, you're smelling it, and that sort of combines together into a sensation that we normally, in our heads, define as taste, but is really more a combination of the two. And I'm just guessing here, the purpose of that is to kind of determine whether this is a good thing to eat or whether this is a bad thing to eat.
So just so we understand, that's how important food has been in the history of humans.
Yeah.
Is we literally have 2 senses working in tandem to determine whether something is edible or not.
Yeah.
And you said when you eat it. It's even more important
before you eat it.
Right? Like,
yeah, that's what...
Get the tongue out.
That's the point, yeah.
Give a little touch. Right? You gotta do both those things if you're in the wild.
Well, there's like some... Obviously, there's like, everyone hears about how like kids don't like vegetables, and like there's a lot of things that taste bad are actually good. A lot of things that taste good, like sugar, that are bad for you. But generally, when you're talking about like poisons or even things that aren't food, if you're trying to like put a handful of dirt in your mouth, sense of taste and smell lets you know, hey, this tastes really bad. You probably shouldn't have this in your mouth right now.
Let's talk about proximity
for
these 2 senses. Are they the same that way, or are they different?
No, they're actually different. Even though these senses are connected in a way, smell is sort of like your first proximity alert before taste gets involved. Because you can smell things not from very far away, like definitely not as far as you can see things or you can hear things, but you can smell things sort of like all around you in a certain proximity. That, and definitely if you're about to eat something and you're like holding it up to your mouth, then you're going to smell it way before it touches your tongue. There's the reason that your nose and your mouth are so close together is because like you're gonna smell that thing. Like there's no way you can not smell that thing. You're only tasting something once that thing touches your tongue.
And so the thing that I think that smell and taste actually sense is the chemical composition of other substances. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, you can't get the chemical composition of something from looking at it.
No.
Or listening to it.
Or feeling it, even.
Right, yeah, no. I mean, like, that's crazy. Like, we literally have chemical parsers.
Yeah.
That are super sensitive.
Yeah, and like, it's not exact, and honestly, we don't really know the exact name of the chemicals, but like, it serves its purpose really well, and that purpose is making sure that you don't die out of poison or something. Like, we're literally, with our brain, with these 2 senses, we're able to smell something, taste something, and identify whether or not this is gonna kill me. And, well, we can kind of learn that when it comes to, like, seeing and hearing. Like, oh, I see a gun, that thing is dangerous. You don't know that until the gun actually kills something in front of you, you know? Taste and smell are way more instinctual to you. It's like, your brain needs to automatically know what's going on here, because well, you can sort of glean things from your perception of the world on the outside. When it comes to taste, you need to know that right away. And because if you don't know that right away, you're not going to wait around until like someone from your tribe dies of eating this berry. You're probably just going to die of eating that berry.
Another interesting thing about smell and taste is, and you alluded to this, but I don't think a lot of people talk about this necessarily actively as a scientific thing, is the conflict across age groups about taste and smell.
Yeah.
What happens, of course, is that who's more picky, young people or old people?
Young people.
Young people, right? And
Yeah.
as you go on in age, you become less picky.
Yeah.
But then these old people have young people, kids, and they're immediately like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you don't like the taste of that.
Yeah.
When, of course, when they were kids,
They didn't like the taste of that at all.
but of course that just speaks to kind of what we are as human beings.
Yeah. And I can think of a very real reason for that. When you're fresh on the earth, you need to be as cautious as you physically can about the foods that you're eating. Like, you need to be eating like only the things you're absolutely sure of. So you're going to be extra cautious. You're going to like add layers of security against yourself. But when you get older, you kind of learn more about the world. And so once you have more information, your brain's like more advanced, your taste buds evolve and change as you do, because you're able to be more careful with what you're eating.
Well, and you can see why it would be evolutionarily advantageous to expand your appetite as far as you can.
Definitely.
Right? So I think your description is exactly right, and of course it all makes sense.
Yeah. Of course, it is very inconvenient in the modern age.
Yeah. So smell and taste, are they more often conscious or unconscious?
I think that smell would be unconscious most of the time, just because most scents are very mild. Like, when I'm smelling right now, there's the sea air, like there's the scent of like salt on the breeze or whatever, but like I'm not really smelling that salt on the breeze all that much, you know? And that's partially because I'm used to it, because it's like not really relevant to me, but it's also just because it's not that strong.
Well, and once again, it goes to the primary purpose of smell, which is eating.
Yeah, and I'm not going to eat the salt on the breeze.
Right. Well, it's just, that's how it doesn't want to be super sensitive.
No.
Right? Like, you don't want to like necessarily need to smell everything. Like, you're not a dog.
When you have something under your nose, then you're going to smell. That's kind of the main point of it. So I would say that smell is a lot of times unconscious, just because there is like an automatic scent in the air. But that's a lot of times just because the scent in the air isn't very strong. But taste, I would say, is conscious. Well, taste is conscious all of the time. There's rarely.
So you're consciously tasting the flavor of your spit right now?
No, okay, well, there's.
I'm just challenging you. Said it's conscious most of the time. I hope not. That's disgusting.
I need to talk about this. Okay, look, taste is similar to smell, where it is unconscious, but that's only because things don't taste.
How can you talk when you're tasting the smell of your own spit right now? It's so gross.
Taste is similar to smell, where it is unconscious, but only because the things that you're tasting most of the time aren't really intense. Like, obviously you have like your spit in your mouth all the time. That doesn't really taste like anything.
That's why humans don't mind drinking other humans' spit, because it doesn't taste.
When we're talking about taste and smell, when they're being put to use, when something's like in your mouth or near your mouth, that's when it becomes very conscious to you. Like, sometimes when you're eating something at the dinner table, when you like already know what it tastes like, thinking about something else, or like your taste might become more unconscious, you might not need to focus on all the time. But when you're like first eating something, or even if you're not like completely like zoned out, or even if it's like not just mild, it's like actually like semi-intense, then you're going to be focused on that taste all the time while that thing is in your mouth. And you're going to be focused on the smell, too, because those things are connected.
Well, but notice what you said. You really only taste and smell things when you first bring them to your mouth and put them in your mouth. Do you know what I mean? And then, I was thinking about, eating pizza last night. The first slice, I was like, I taste this, and I was like, but then there was just this moment where it's like, I just went to unconscious, shoving pizza in my mouth mode.
Yeah.
It's just like...
Yeah, you have
and I guess I'm tasting, but it's kind of unconscious at that point.
Yeah, that's definitely more true for mild or pleasant tastes. Because when you're eating something that, you already know that you like, it's really easier for that to fade into the background. Where if I'm eating something that, I hate, then I can't do anything but focus on it because I'm like, I want this out of my mouth. I do not want this in my mouth, you know?
That's a good point too, yeah. But it was interesting, it's interesting to me that even when food is in your mouth,
yeah,
taste can be unconscious, and smell.
Yeah, and the reason obviously why the unpleasant tastes are more obvious than the pleasant ones is because that's the whole point of taste, because if you have like something poisonous in your mouth, then you're gonna want to know the entire time you're eating. Your brain's gonna be like, get this out of your mouth, get this out of your mouth. And while you're eating something that you already know is fine, it's fine, and your brain's like, yeah, whatever, it's cool. You should keep eating this.
So this is kind of a weird one. Smell, taste, about ready to eat something. How does it go from unconscious to conscious?
I mean, logically, it's kind of just unconscious all the time, and then like, so once you eat something, then it becomes conscious when you like take the first bite. And normally when you're eating something like unconsciously, you're tasting something unconsciously, smelling something unconsciously, you're not going to suddenly snap into awareness or whatever unless there's like a really like sudden taste on it. If I'm eating pizza and there's suddenly like a random pepper in the middle of my pizza, then I'm like, what's this pepper doing here? So I would say that the experience about moving from unconscious to conscious it's pretty sudden as well when something like new is entering. It's sudden in a similar way to touch is, because when something bad enters my mouth, I'm kind of like, there's not really like a split second where I'm like, oh, I don't really taste this yet. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get this out of my mouth.
You might actually spit it out before you even process that there's something gross in your mouth.
Yeah, you're right. That's similar to touch, where it's like the instinctual thing, the impulse is automatically to react to it before you're even consciously aware of it. And that's because obviously, just like touch is the proximity alert, taste and smell are the proximity alerts for your food, where if you have something poisonous, you have something bad in your mouth, you need to get that out right now, because the longer it stays in your mouth, the more likely you are to die from it.
Yeah, and when I think about taste and smell, our experience of them consciously is extremely fleeting and rare.
Yeah.
Like, like we said, you first put food in your mouth, you taste it a little bit, but then, pretty much that just turns off. And you kind of want it to turn off. Like I don't like thinking about chewed up food in my mouth or something. Do you know what I mean? Like we kind of turn that off, right? A little bit. Or you like of course you taste your own spit.
When it tastes good, I want to eat it, dude. Oh, actually I hate all food. Yeah, that's definitely a normal opinion.
No, but I just mean that once you take that bite, first couple bites, you're kind of done tasting and smelling a little bit. You can just start munging.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of an efficiency thing, right? Like, once again, your consciousness, that you're this monitoring capability that we have, right? That can kind of move between our various inputs. That's expensive and valuable, right? It's like a telescope.
Yeah.
Right? They can only focus at one point in the sky. You're always moving that thing around a little bit.
Especially when people are doing things they're like watching something or they're talking to other people. There's almost always another activity laid over that eating. And honestly, there's a reason why for all these things that exist. But it's kind of sad that it's like when I'm like eating something really good that I'm only tasting it actually the first 2 times I eat it. Like, it's kind of nice to be able to, once we move past the caveman age, and once we're eating food for, pleasure, and we're tasting for pleasure rather than for, necessity, it'd be kind of nice just to, when you have something really good in front of you, just to kind of, savor every bite and really think about the experience.
Well, and that's when you can use that consciousness, that executive function. It can, not only does it move around between what it's monitoring, and I really feel like that's the heart of consciousness. It's the simplest form of it. But there's also a somewhat related function that we have, which is our executive function. And you can say consciously, hey, why don't you just slow down and savor this food?
And we do that.
We do that sometimes. Not enough, probably, though.
No.
Humans were very, as you said, we got a lot of other things going on. We're very busy.
Yeah, and we do that for a lot of things. We do that for, when we're talking about consciousness, just when normal people are talking about consciousness and they're not making a whole video series on it, they're normally thinking about these changes of focus in your brain as almost a subconscious action, when of course that's the consciousness at all. And then they think that their conscious action would be taking control of the wheel and being like, no, actually I want to focus on this. But it's no matter how we're defining it, that process does exist. the automatically consciousness like protocol where it's like, oh, we need to focus on this and this and this and this and this. But we are our brains. And while it has a lot of like automatic things that are going on, we can take control of it. And so it's nice to know that like consciousness, even though it operates on like multiple levels and there's like the executive function part of it, it does connect in that way to just like us and who we are. And we are able to just take control of it. And in a way, like that sort of processing, that sort of like the processing that's going on and taking control of that processing and just like everything that's involved in consciousness, it's really not that different, I think, than just the way that most people think about it unconsciously.
So, last question then, we kind of just touched on it briefly there. When we move from an unconscious smelling, tasting state to a conscious smelling, tasting state, right? Now it's part of consciousness, the consciousness of smelling and tasting. Anything magical or weird or...
No. Well, yeah, it's just kind of like the part of our brain is like focusing on one thing and then the other thing. It's a very biological impulse to be like, is this poison? Is this not poison? But I kind of like want to go back to like what I said when we were first talking about like the magic of things. Yeah, like maybe a computer could replicate this. Maybe it's sort of just like a series of like if-then functions. Maybe the consciousness thing isn't really magical in the way where we're able to explain it and the science is able to do it. It's not anything outside of science at all. But I do think that just in the way that we perceive things, there's a magic in it, just inherently. Not in the way where not in the magic definition where it's like something that's completely unexplainable, but there is a sort of aspect to it that we can't quite explain, and we see that before where we're able to talk around these things. We're able to talk about the reasons they exist, like how it sort of feels to switch from one area to another. But we're like, I keep going back to every time you ask me, how does it feel to see something? How does it feel to hear something? How does it feel to feel something? I'm never really able to give a concrete answer because it's just, this is how it exists. And I feel like there's a sort of magic in the way, maybe not in the processing urge, maybe not in the way the subroutines function, but just in the act of sensing these things at all, in the act of perceiving the world, even if it can be replicated, there's still a magic in how I perceive the world and how I'm thinking and feeling about the world. And I think that's true for anyone. And I'm not sure if that same thing can be replicated by computers. Certainly not now, but it may be in the future. But I think that even if it could be replicated by computers that way, that sort of magic that would come to the computers would really be the sign of consciousness in the way that we talk about it in artificial intelligence. We hope that you enjoyed that video, and if you did, please consider checking out the next one in the series.
Or some of our other series on philosophy and life.
We upload videos every Friday, so don't forget to like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. See you next week.